So welcome to Leadership Soundbites. And this week we're super excited to welcome Laurie Cozart of, and I've got to read it, Brain Squared Solutions. She's CEO and executive coach and just an awesome instructor. Roko and I, when we went through the UC Davis coaching program and stuff, Laurie was one of the instructors and then coaches during that program. So there are a number of connections, huh?
Can I just say, one of my favorite parts of the coaching program, because of the subject matter that you touched on with the neurosciences, totally fascinated me. So excited to have you here.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be here.
I know, right? And Michelle, you didn't mention that she's an author.
Oh my goodness. Would you stop? I mean, seriously, I'm not done yet. Roko's so excited. And Laurie's an author. And one of her books, because I know you've contributed to another book, but one of her books is Coaching Conversations. And so did we hit it all now?
I think so.
Okay.
I'm just in, I think I'm in awe right now. So I'm a little overexcited, just so excited she's here.
Well, we're going to try and control Roko's enthusiasm so we can start talking, because this week is all about the power of presence. And so I do want to kick us off with a quote. There were a number of them that we kind of wove through or talked about. And I'm looking over here and I apologize, people, because didn't print it off, stuff locked up on me, but here we go. As a leader, your every action has a consequence. Make sure it is the one you intend. And so I think for this one, and we'll unpack it a little bit more, but when I think about this, there's so many times that I've experienced it and I've seen other leaders that it may be, that's not my intention. You know, there's some unintended consequence, I'll call it, that it wasn't their intention. And so I'll say this from a leadership perspective, because you have this differential in power, you know, to your teams, be intentional about what your actions are and how they're going to land, because you can avoid the unintentional consequences as a result of those other actions. So welcome to the conversation, Laurie. So what's on your mind about this?
Yeah, so much just went through my mind as you read that quote. And I think the word that really stands out for me is intentional. And too many of us do not really live intentionally. We don't plan our days intentionally. We don't plan our interactions intentionally. We sort of go on autopilot and we do the same things over and over again because it's easy. And intentionality takes a little bit more forethought and it takes a little bit more time. And so we sort of overlook the intentionality of things and move too quickly. And I wish that, and I know that leaders are busy, and I know that all of the leaders that are listening are super, super great leaders. But I think there are just some tiny little things that we could do a little bit differently to really have a better impact and be more present. And in that being more present, actually making a difference in the ripple effect that we create. So those are the first things that stood out.
And Roko, I know you're like ready. And so I'm going to just share the thing that came to mind when you were talking about that, because part of it is I think about if we're not intentional about something and plan what our objectives are, how we want to show up, whatever that may be, we may have OS moments in the middle of whatever that engagement is, right? And so, and we tell people, if you're doing improvement or anything else or change management, you're gonna put the time in the work somewhere. So don't do it in recovery. Do it in the front end of it, right? And so even it's a matter of, because people may be telling themselves, I don't have time for that, to your point. It doesn't take as long as you think. It's like the dishes in the sink that you're like, I don't have time for that. It's going to take too long, right? And we tell ourselves 30 minutes, an hour, it's going to be whatever, right? And the reality of it is it's 2 minutes, okay?
2 minutes.
Yeah. So plan that and set the intention for yourself. And it may be 30 seconds before you walk into that engagement. And it's that simple. Roko.
So I want to get us going on the power of presence. And for those leaders who are just getting started, and maybe have been a leader for a long time, how do you define presence? How do you develop presence?
Great question. So the way that I would define presence is it's twofold. One of them is the impact that you have when you're there, the impact of you, your language, your communication style, your empathy, your compassion, all of your personal presence when you show up. The other piece of that is actually showing up.
Mhm.
And I think too often in our very busy lifestyles, especially as high impact leaders, we move too quickly and we oftentimes forget to actually show up
So what does that
for the
mean?
other people.
So if you were gonna give somebody a little bit more on what showing up means, right? So we don't assume a shared meaning or that everyone goes, well, I was there in the room.
Sure.
What does show up mean?
Well, to your point, it actually means being there. So I was working with a leader a while ago, so several years ago, and she came to me because she wanted to create more trust and safety with her team. And I asked her how long she'd been there. She'd been there for 11 months. And I said, well, when you onboarded yourself with your team, what did you do? Well, what do you mean? And I said, well, did you hold one-on-one meetings? Did you have a big meeting with everybody, or did you do both? And she said, I've never done either.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
In fact, in 11 months, there is a back door to my office. I go in the back door and I've never even met these people in person.
So that was virtual, in-person virtual.
This was before virtual. This
Right.
was, right? So, I mean, is there any doubt about why there's no trust?
Yeah.
Trust on the team?
I have to share with you. So when I was going through the coaching program, I came up and asked you a question about this very thing about presence because I was struggling with it. And the advice that you gave me has just stuck with me, and it has changed how I show up as a leader and as a coach, because working in both worlds. But you said part of coaching is doing. So doing the things that create the structure around coaching, but presence is about being coaching. It's about showing up for the other person and wanting to learn something new or understand something about that other person, and not so much about the structure, but it's about being coaching. And I was like, I never really thought of it that way. I was so focused on, I've got to do the rule of 4, or I've got to, where am I in all the ICF core competencies of coaching? And when you spoke about being coaching, to me, that really resonated.
You know, it's funny when you say that. I think about the difference, and I've had communications and talking to people about it in change management, is going from here, right, to here. Because when you're being someone, you're stepping into that identity of what that is. And it's so much more than just being in the room. Because I've had people, and I've done it myself, where I would do one-on-ones and I was not present because I was so aware the phone would ring and I'd pick it up and I'd answer the phone because I wanted to be everything to everybody, right? The worst freaking thing you can do. You're laughing, Laurie, but I'm like, my intention was not to disrespect someone. But I thought, I'm just going to handle all this stuff. And I don't know how many out there can relate to that. I was not in the moment with the person that was sitting in front of me. And I think that's it, is like, get rid of the noise and actually be there for someone else, in service to someone else. And so I completely agree with you on that, Laurie, in Roko, and I know who you are. We've been doing stuff for a while. It's like a parent with their children, and they go through all the lists of names before they get to that child's name. But I completely agree with you. And it's hard to do because we get in our heads. And if we stay in our heads, we can't be here in the moment.
Right. That's right. And we move way too quickly. There's no time for reflection. And that impact, think about what you just described, Michelle, think about what that feels for the other person. Now, not only do we have a power differential, but we've now put the other person also in a fight or flight response because I don't really matter. And when people are in that sort of heightened hyper arousal response, they lose access to their creative thinking skills, their communication skills, their ability to be innovative, their ability to possess empathy and collaborate with others. So when we have high stress environments where our leaders aren't really present and we don't feel like we matter, it creates a ripple effect that doesn't just affect the two people involved, that it affects a team, it affects the organization, and more importantly, it ripples out into families and communities. If I have a poor interaction with my boss, depending on the intensity, that can stay in my nervous system for up to 72 hours.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not at work 72 hours in a row. I'm going home, and that's going to be released or show up in some way in my family life. And that feels like a huge responsibility of leadership to me.
Yeah, but the upside is it takes, to your point, it's small little tweaks so that we don't have those impacts. Part of it is, the word emotional intelligence or the phrase emotional intelligence, but it's that awareness of how am I feeling? How are others feeling? How are others receiving what I'm saying so that we can adjust real time? And all of that, it's impossible to have emotional intelligence if you're not present.
That's right. That's very, very true. And we're sort of losing that, right? I mean, we haven't been present with each other for several years now, and we're really losing the ability to connect and be in the moment. There's a difference between being on screens with each other versus, connected, where we're really listening and sort of feeling each other. There's a difference with all of the technology involved. And so how do we create those moments where we are actually present with the other person? And to Roko's point earlier, that really requires listening, pulling ourselves into ourselves and having coaching be part of who we are, and that fundamental skill of listening. And I think to Roko's point earlier, I've always said coaching conversations, you can use coaching skills in any conversation. And it will change all of your relationships. It's just that we have to remember not every conversation is a coaching conversation. But embodying those, right? Embodying those skills and how we show up and how we present ourselves is so impactful to the people around us.
Yeah. Presence can apply not only in coaching situations, but just in general relationships, whether it's in your work relationships or in your family relationships. It's funny, as we were preparing for today, I started looking at different quotes, and a lot of the quotes out there around presence are more about relationships more than they are about, working. And so it was interesting to me to see so many quotes focused on presence and in relation, how it impacts relationships.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say to your point that work is relationships.
Well, yes.
Right. I mean, leaders have to get things done through the relationships that they have. That's what stood out for me in that statement.
Yeah.
But it doesn't take the time, go back to the beginning. It doesn't take the time that we imagine it takes. Yeah. You spend the time in fostering that, in making sure someone feels heard, right? And that's the listening part and the presence piece of it. So because if I'm not feeling heard, my voice is going to get louder. I'm going to get more agitated. I'm going to say the same thing 50 times. Okay. And so when people go, well, I don't want to engage with so-and-so because, it's a 30-minute conversation about the same thing. Well, do you ever wonder why? Because they're not feeling heard the first time they say it.
Yeah.
So shift the stuff to where you're actually focused on what the other person's saying, acknowledge it. And then people can move on from that.
Yeah. I was having a conversation with a fellow coach, and we were talking about this exact topic, presence, and how somebody shows up in, maybe the other person shows up, a client. What does the client really need when they come into the room? Do they really need us to start with, so what do you want to talk about today? Or is there a moment of sort of level setting? What do you need most from me right now? Instead of, rushing like we typically do. And it's the same, I think, for any conversation. What do you really need from me most right now? And then allowing ourselves to be adaptable and flexible in the moment to show up as the other person needs us to show up. And I think that's huge when it comes to leadership. You know, one of the things that I try to work with my leaders around is flexibility, and the ability to be able to be flexible in their communication style, in the way that they show up in the moment, right? So that they're giving the other person whatever it is they need, not just getting their own needs fulfilled.
Well, and it works. It's when you were talking about asking the question, what do you most need from me right now? Not everyone knows that. But the other thing that comes to mind is that question can be an internal question to ourselves if we're a leader with a team. What does my team most need right now? Who do I need to be able to support them in the best way that you know, to meet their needs? And so I think it's an awesome question to check with ourselves, to go back to the beginning, is then we can be intentional about what we need to do and how we show up and what needs to change. Because if I'm someone that, you know, I look at DISC profiles, I'm a high D, so I'm going to bullet point everything. I'm all about results. I'm, you know, and I show up and there's something that happened with the team that I can feel people are not happy. Well, I can't go right to my bullets to go to results, right? Because they're not going to be with me on this journey at whatever point we're going. So we need to spend the time to go, what's happening? And we'll talk about, to your point, you've got an elephant in the room in the back there behind you, right? But in that situation, it's the elephant in the room, right? There's something else going on. So bring me up to speed. What did I miss? Let's talk about that first. And then we can, you know, if time permits, navigate around what my agenda may have been or the talking points that I wanted to get to. But it's that awareness of what's happening right now and what does my team need, or who do I need to be able to support them?
Such a great point, Michelle. And I think oftentimes leaders are moving so quickly that they don't even know the elephant in the room exists. And so I'm wondering what would happen if leaders actually, and I know a lot of them do, but if leaders actually took just 2 minutes in the morning, to your point, just a really fast story. I actually hated to stop to get gas because every time I stopped to get gas, it felt like it took forever. So I timed it. I actually timed it one day because I'm also a high D. So, and efficiency is one of my values, right? And it takes exactly 2 minutes. From parking to put, you know, all of the stuff involved, 2 minutes. And I thought, okay, so that sort of dampened my whole response to having to get gas. So now I practice this, and every time something seems like it's going to take too long, I just time it so that I don't have that false story wrapping around in my head, right?
Yes.
But if we just took a couple of minutes in the morning to say, what is the most important thing that I need to focus on today? Maybe it's a conversation, maybe it's whatever else, but what's going to have the biggest and the broadest, the deepest impact for me as a leader? How present do I need to be for that moment?
Roko, what's on your brain?
Yeah, I love it. So I've got a lot of things going on in my brain because there's been so many good nuggets, but, you know, Laurie mentioned time, you know, we're moving so fast all the time. And so what was resonating with me is slow down. And to your point, you reflected and said, I'm going to time it and see how long it takes me. Because again, going back to that neuroscience, right? Our brains have you know, are remembering, oh, this takes a long time. So they're reinforcing, whether we realize it or not, this perception that it takes a lot of time. So really getting folks to slow down and think about their day or have that intention. I love that.
Well, or check the frickin' stories, right? So I'm going to share something.
I know you love checking the stories.
Well, yeah, I'm going to share something that people are like, you do what? So in the morning when I'm brushing my teeth, it's a 2-minute thing, right? I cannot stand in front of the mirror and stare at myself for 2 minutes. I'm sorry, people, I just can't. It's amazing what you can get done in that 2 minutes while the toothbrush is going. I start my coffee. I can, you know, move stuff around. I get my dog bowls cleaned all with one hand while I'm doing this stuff. And then it finally ends. I'm like, you can do a lot in 2 minutes. So I share that. People are going to go, Michelle runs around the house for me. Yes, because I can't stand to just stand there and do nothing. But I say that because check yourself on what you can actually get done and how long stuff actually takes, and do it with your teams. So to your point, unwind the story that you may have going. So I want to wrap us up and just say, my God, I love this. This is so awesome chatting with you and seeing you, and Roko seeing your face on the screen too. So what's one thing, try and keep it to one, that we want people to walk away with based on our topic from today? Don't everyone
You
talk
asking me, or are you going to have Laurie go first?
Laurie
I'd love Laurie to go first.
Laurie can go first.
I will absolutely go first. If the one thing I'm hoping they take away is that your brain lies.
Oh yeah,
And it makes up stories to make sure that it's right about things. And so take some time to just slow down and reflect, and be intentional about the ripple effect that you have on others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, create some awareness about the fact that you do, because I don't think people actually made those connections necessarily. Everyone did before. Yeah, thank you. Roko.
I think it's for me, the power of presence is, it's not about you. It's about you focusing on the other person, being interested and being open to learn something new about that other person.
Oh, I love that. That reminds me of something that somebody once, my dad used to say, be interesting, not interested, or be interested, not interesting.
No, I like that.
Yes.
It's the flip of the other. Yeah, it's not about you. There's another quote. Hold on. It was, the secret to having a commanding presence isn't about personal power, but about empowering others. So it is that shift to it's everyone else. The thing I'll say about presence, because it's an interesting word to define. And so a lot of it with presence, I think, is about experiencing what that means. And you can see it on the reactions in the faces of other people. But I encourage people to just practice or try staying in your body in the moment, and to where you're not in here, you're here, right? Your heart's connecting to someone else's heart, and you're actually in the moment, to just feel and see and hear what's going on, and not worry about the next thing that you got going, because it really isn't that much time. And the impact, the ripple effect, if you will, of that connection is super powerful. So I appreciate your time. This has been Leadership Soundbites with Roko, Michelle, and Laurie, and get Laurie's book, Coaching Conversations, Brain Squared Solutions, which 2 or 4 or 10 are better than 1.
That's exactly right.
Anyway, so like, subscribe, and share. And I think that's it. Until next time, we appreciate you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.